Man's Search for Meaning is one of the top 10 most influential books chosen by the U.S. Congress. It has been translated into 24 languages and is famous worldwide. The author, Viktor Frankl, was a renowned psychiatrist known as the miracle worker of the 20th century. During the Nazi era, as a Jew, he was imprisoned in a concentration camp, often referred to as the death factory. Yet, he not only survived that hellish cage, but also pioneered logotherapy, rekindling the sense of purpose for those in despair. This book is divided into two parts. The first part recounts the author's experiences in the concentration camp, and the second part blends his experiences with academic insights to create a therapeutic method that helps people find meaning in their rebirth from dead ends and rediscover their glorious steps in their own life. If 3 words were to summarize this book, they would be choice, suffering, and meaning. A famous Russian writer once said, "I have only one fear, and that is not being worthy of the suffering I have endured. I have endured too much, and I must find meaning in what I have gone through." How do we turn pain into meaning? Perhaps it is just one step away, a step called choice, and the distance between each of us varies in this step. After traversing the mountains and rivers of life, who hasn't suffered some life scars? But when the storm passes and the rain stops, you will suddenly realize that all the pain you encounter in this life is actually here to save you. If you are struggling with pain, despair in life, or if you are confused, sorrowful, and afraid, you can find strength in this book. Hello everyone, welcome to Bookwise, the channel for sharing comprehensive personal development knowledge through great books. This week, I'd like to share with you a content titled, "Everything That Makes You Suffer Is Here to Save You," through the famous psychology book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Let's dive in. Choice. You can have everything taken away from you except your right to choose. In the 1930s, Europe was engulfed in the horror of the Nazis. At that time, Frankl was the head of the neurology department at a hospital in Vienna, capital of Austria, and had a happy family. To protect Frankl's safety, the U.S. consulate in Vienna invited him to take an immigration visa. However, he couldn't bear the thought of leaving his parents, family, and patients behind. So he chose to stay. Unexpectedly, a few months later, the Nazis occupied Vienna. He and his wife, parents, and siblings were arrested and taken to concentration camp. Like Frankl, thousands, 1,500 others shared the same fate. Many of them were businessmen, doctors, teachers, and scientists. However, these once respectable and upright individuals were turned into prisoners, arbitrarily trampled and humiliated. They constantly faced threats from gas chambers, incinerators, or being beaten to death. All their belongings were confiscated, and they were herded like cattle into prison camps that could barely hold 200 people. Every day, they were given a small piece of bread, a thin bowl of soup, and wore thin clothing while being forced to repair railroads, tracks, and perform heavy labor. At night, they curled up on planks, 9 people sharing 2 blankets and using mud-caked shoes as pillows. If they were careless and encountered guards in a foul mood, they would be beaten mercilessly. Even more terrifying, if their bodies could no longer endure the heavy labor, they would be sent to the gas chambers to meet their end. In the concentration camps, almost everyone contemplated suicide. Easiest method was to run into the electrified fence. Thus, ending it all permanently was not difficult. The real challenge was to continue surviving, to stay alive. So what kept Frankl from losing his will to live, and even made him strive to fight against the odds to save his life? For him, it was primarily the right to choose. He always believed that even under the worst physical and psychological conditions, people could maintain a certain level of mental freedom and independent consciousness. From that, they could choose their behavior and reactions, as well as decide who they wanted to become. The first time Frankl had to bathe naked in the concentration camp, he realized that aside from his bare body, everyone had nothing at all. Accumulated wealth was meaningless. Many things you have, everything external to you, can be taken away by an uncontrollable force at any time. The only things that cannot be taken are your freedom to choose your reactions. We cannot control what happens in our lives, but we can control our emotions and actions when faced with these events. Every prisoner in the concentration camp faced the same harsh living conditions. Their reactions were different. Some chose to give up, some chose indifference, and some chose to persist until the end. So what will you choose when facing pain? Think about the classic dialogue of a French writer. Do you really love life? Yes, I love life. Have you ever suffered? Few times. But pain itself is life. Life is like the ocean with its ups and downs, and we never know where it will take us. Suffering is like the tides, rushing in wave after wave. In this world, no life is filled with only sweetness without bitterness, and no life is filled with only bitterness without a touch of sweetness. Life is inherently full of ups and downs, and it always comes with suffering. This suffering could manifest as endless overtime, staying up late and waking up very early, tirelessly hustling day after day to sustain a living. The pain could be the sudden loss of a loved one, leaving you alone. It could also be an unfortunate accident. In this life, we will go through countless joys and sorrows, but no matter how difficult life gets, everything will eventually pass. Without experiencing a bit of cold, how can one appreciate the breathtaking beauty? Cherry blossoms. Delicate flowers can bloom in cracks in the rocks, towering trees can stand tall in barren lands, and you can do the same. You will always have a choice besides giving up, besides letting go, besides blaming yourself. It is the choice to face difficulties and never give up easily. Just like that, even when you stand on the edge of the abyss, it cannot make you sink and fall into it. So remember, everything in this world has cause and effect, and everything that makes you suffer is here to save you. Suffering. What makes you suffer will make you stronger. In 100 years of solitude, it is said, we walk on the eternal journey of life, running on a rugged road, reborn in failure, sorrow clinging to the body, suffering falling everywhere. We are tired but cannot stop, we suffer but cannot avoid. Suffering is a common occurrence in life. Understanding this will bring peace to your mind and strength to accept and face challenges. Suffering always has its positive side. As a great poet once said, remember well all that suffering leaves behind. When suffering passes, it will become sweet. Life is also like a spice. The more it is crushed by ups and downs, the richer its flavor becomes. Although Frankl had a strong desire to live, the daily torture sometimes plunged him into despair. Like other fellow prisoners, he suffered from severe edema, illnesses due to prolonged starvation, lack of clothing, and lack of sleep. His feet were swollen, his knees couldn't bend, and his legs were arthritic. Every step was extremely painful. Later, when assigned to care for patients, he unfortunately contracted typhus and almost ended up in the crematorium. Experiencing death's brink time and again made him rethink the meaning of life. He observed all kinds of people in the concentration camp and noticed that as long as they had a loved one in their hearts, they would never give up on life. Therefore, he decided not to let himself be numbed by fatigue or illness, but to see the concentration camp as a place for practice, psychological training ground. When other prisoners were paralyzed and lost themselves, he taught them to bypass suffering with humorous jokes. When prisoners were depressed and wanted to give up hope, he used suggestive speeches to encourage everyone to stay upbeat. Even when suffering from typhus and potentially facing death or being killed at any time, he continued to jot down notes for the future publication of his psychology book. 3 years of captivity only made his heart stronger. At the same time, he gained a profound understanding of human nature, which he used to develop a unique psychological therapy. His physical pain drove his boundless mental motivation. Frankl once said, "Only after going through hellish suffering can one develop the strength to create heaven. After the bone-chilling cold, red rose blooms in the wind. After the pain of a broken wing, eagle soars high in the sky." We always fear failure and dread the crisis of suffering, but we don't realize that these very bitter and unpleasant experiences are what pave the way for us to rise. People you grit your teeth to endure, and the tasks that cause you pain will become the nutrients that help you grow and be reborn. No pain is incurable. No downfall is endless. All that is lost will return in another form. Human nature seeks advantage and avoids disadvantage. But if we know that in harsh environments, people have the opportunity to achieve spiritual elevation, we will never see suffering as a disaster, and will not feel unlucky when facing adversity. Frankl believed that suffering, bad luck, and death are inseparable components of life. A person's life is incomplete without suffering and death. In suffering, people can still hold their heads high, taste the essence of suffering, and be proud of enduring it. Dostoevsky once said, "I have only one fear, and that is not being worthy of the suffering I have endured." So to be worthy of what we have experienced, what must we do? Meaning, a person who has a reason to live can endure almost anything. This is a saying by Nietzsche, and also a motto that Frankl used to explain the importance of meaning in a person's life. After all suffering comes meaning. In the concentration camp, Frankl witnessed many people perish, not due to lack of food or medicine, but because they had no reason to continue living. Statistics show that the highest death rates in concentration camps occurred around Christmas, and the same was true on the battlefields of World War II. Most prisoners hoped they could go home before Christmas, but when hope was extinguished, their spirits collapsed. Mental decline severely weakened the body's resistance, leading to death. In modern life, the same thing happened. Many people suffer from depression and psychological disorders because they cannot find meaning in their lives, feeling lost in a society where they believe they are caught between existence and invisibility. Thus, Frankl proposed that what keeps people alive is not hope, meaning. People live to seek the meaning of their own lives. Humanity, it is more important than achieving joy or avoiding suffering. In the book, the author presents 3 different ways to help us find life's meaning. First is to create emotionally fulfilling work or pursue a specific career. Simply put, this is achieving success in work. The second is to experience a state of care, affection, and love for a specific person. The third is to have the courage to face and confront challenges, hardships, critical moments in life. Nothing else in the world can help a person survive as effectively as realizing their life has meaning. Meaning of life encompasses a broad cycle from birth to death, including difficulties and hardships. Therefore, open your heart and experience this life, no matter how much suffering or happiness it contains. You will achieve as much as you can endure. After being rescued from the concentration camp in 1945, Frankl found himself terribly lonely. Parents, brother, and beloved pregnant wife all died in the camp from illness and hunger. Fellow prisoners who survived with him emigrated to other countries. With no family or friends, he decided to return to his old profession as a psychiatrist, to help those mentally tortured after the war. He threw himself into his work, combining his experiences with academic knowledge to create logotherapy. Through lectures and psychological counseling, he saved many fathers and mothers who wanted to commit suicide after losing their children, husbands who couldn't let go of their deceased wives, and thousands of strangers living in confusion. He rewrote the manuscript he had kept when entering the concentration camp, and spent 9 days completing man's search for meaning. In the following decades, he wrote over 30 books and traveled the world to lecture. His experience of escaping death ignited a great passion for life, and he was always ready to embrace new experiences at any time. At 67, he began learning to fly and obtained his pilot's license within a few months. At 80, he resolutely challenged outdoor sports, climbing the highest and largest mountains of the European continent. Even at over 90, he continued to speak with visitors from around the world and personally responded to letters weekly to help people resolve their questions. Many were deeply moved by his experiences and action. Harvard, Stanford, and other prestigious universities invited him as a professor. Famous politicians, philosophers, and even Pope John Paul II read his books and visited him from afar. One could say that the war destroyed Frankl's life and took away his loved ones, but he chose to rise from the rubble of suffering and live as a shining beacon. There is a saying, suffering is a stepping stone for geniuses, fortune for the capable, and an abyss for the weak. Suffering is always a challenge, a compulsory course in your life. You can achieve as much as you can endure. From choice to overcoming suffering, finally understanding the great meaning of life. Frankl's life has left an indelible source of inspiration for millions worldwide, and the logotherapy he founded continues to benefit people. If you study psychology or follow the psychological book series shared by the Bookwise channel, you will see that compared to psychoanalysis, logotherapy does not focus too much on facing the inner self and the past, but mainly looks towards the future and the primary goal of existence. For Freud, it is the pursuit of pleasure. Adler believes it is the pursuit of superiority, overcoming inferiority. Meanwhile, Frankl believes it is the pursuit of meaning. Finding the meaning of life is the main driving force of existence. The author of How the Steel Was Tempered said, "Human life is like a turbulent river. Not finding islands or hitting reefs, how can it create beautiful waves? See flowers, birds, fish, and stars, how can one lack the tempering of nature? Life will be better when we dare to actively train ourselves in difficult circumstances. Only when crossing a deep chasm never before experienced can one climb to the seemingly unreachable peak." When an individual successfully finds meaning, they will not only feel happiness, but also have the ability to face all life's difficulties. I hope that when we face difficulties, suffering, and failures, we look at the book Man's Search for Meaning and, like Frankl, rise above all suffering to have a strong inner self, constantly creative and passionate about life. Enjoy your present life as if living for the second time. And if you want to learn more about logotherapy, you can also find the book The Present of Ours, tentatively translated as Prisoners of Thought. This is a very special book because the two authors of this book sought Frankl to continue researching logotherapy, helping everyone to apply it in their lives. Thank you for listening. If you find this video useful, please share it with those who need it. Don't forget to leave comments, thoughts, and feelings below. Support me with a like, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to watch my latest videos every week. Once again, thank you, and see you in the next videos.